Since he was indicted for abuse of power and public coercion, Texas Governor Rick Perry and his supporters have insisted the charges against the Republican governor are politically motivated. Perry has pleaded not guilty and continues to campaign in advance of the 2016 presidential race. But there are also critics saying that regardless of the verdict, the charges may be too damaging for voters to overlook.
This has put not just Texas Republicans, but national Republicans in a mind to take another look at Perry, which is exactly what he's trying to achieve. But once we get beyond the politics, the theatrics of this, and into court, I think it will undoubtedly be detrimental to him. The question is how detrimental, and I would think very.
Some other Texas political watchers say Perry's political gain could be short-lived if this case does go to court, where testimony about who said what to whom could get pretty ugly. Even as ugly as Governor Chris Christie's Bridgegate incident in New Jersey. Joining us now for some political insight is GOP strategist Matt Mackowiak. Matt, that political science professor just said that he thinks this will ultimately be detrimental to Perry once some of these details come out. Could you expand on that a little bit more? What does he mean by that?
Well, I think, look, first of all, I think anytime you're indicted, the headline does damage to whoever's indicted, right? So there's an image, there's damage to your image that happens whether you're fully acquitted or not. Now, setting that aside, I would probably disagree with Cal Jilson's point that this is detrimental to Perry. It's only detrimental to him if he's convicted. Ultimately, if he's able to be successful in winning an acquittal here, either a summary dismissal early on or winning through the grand jury, through a jury trial later down the road, he's going to be able to say he's a fighter, that he fought back when he was targeted, that he provided the best defense he possibly could, and that he was successful and that he won. So, I think that from that perspective, the resolution is what matters most here, and it may be 6 months before we know, maybe a year or 2 years before we know, depending on the process.
For the governor, a quicker resolution is a better thing for him, correct?
No question, and that's, I think, part of the reason why you saw him show up and book himself earlier in the week. It's why they moved up the arraignment. I think at every stage they're going to try to move this thing along as fast as possible, seek a summary judgment, limit evidence, perhaps move to a different venue. There's lots of options that they have at their disposal.
So the job for his lawyers right now is to get this thing resolved, thrown out, acquitted, and they started doing that today.
That's right. I mean, it's also not clear to me how much of the evidence has been provided to Perry's defense team at this point. You don't have rules of discovery in a grand jury setting as you do in a criminal prosecution. So, look, in a grand jury setting, the prosecutor has all the cards. In a criminal prosecution, both sides have cards. And so this is a very different situation. And I think this is the argument that many of the detractors against the indictment are making. There's not much detail that's out there. The prosecutor may have evidence, but based on what's publicly known and what's been reported by newspapers, even some of the grand jurors are now talking, it's not clear that there's any real quid pro quo or any smoking gun that really is bad for Perry. At this point, it looks like it's two lawful actions, the call for the resignation and the line item veto, and the prosecutor's trying to say the combination of those two is somehow unlawful.
And all the while, his attorneys are doing whatever they can to get this thing resolved as soon as possible. Okay, Matt Mackowiak, thank you very much.
My pleasure.